we had a pretty bad crash many, many years ago. It's probably about 20 years ago. It happened on I-95, just above where our station is in downtown Miami. It was a woman. She lost control of her vehicle. She had 3 children in the car. Nobody had a seatbelt on. Everybody was ejected out of that car. All 3 children landed on 3rd Avenue outside of our station.
It's a drop.
Yeah. One of the children actually hit the traffic light that mans our rear gate of our station. That light was twisted for years from that child's body. So the first officer that arrived there was one of our senior officers that worked day shift. And he ended up holding on to one of the children. And I remember we spoke right afterwards, and he was tortured by it. And he told me, he goes, I saw my son looking at that child's face. And that's all I kept thinking about. And I know it bothered him. And I kept telling him, and I worked afternoons at the time. And I was like, listen, keep talking. You need to keep talking about it. You got to keep talking about it to get it out of your system, because we have to. We can't bottle that up.
How do you take that home and compartmentalize it and not let it affect, your children, right? Or your relationship with your kids, right? Or your significant other or the family?
That's probably one of the hardest things to do. Luckily, I hadn't had my kids yet when I was a detective. I had them later. But I know for me, that was kind of a bad thing. It's good because we compartmentalize and we don't deal with it right then and there, because you're in business mode and you just put things to the side. But the bad thing is, what we end up doing, and what I know I did, is I kept putting stuff to the side and not dealing with it. So eventually,
sweeping it under the carpet.
Yeah, you're putting it into a bag, your bag of garbage, and it's just sitting there looking at you, waiting for one day to come back on you. Mm-hmm. And it did. For me, it came back on me when I had my first daughter. In fact, when I took her home from the hospital, I remember sitting outside. She had jaundice, so we had to sit outside in the sun. And I remember sitting outside with her, and every notification I had made as a traffic homicide detective, as well as being a homicide supervisor, all came to me at the same time when I looked at her. That I was like, oh, this is now all this baggage. I need to deal with it. And it took a while for me to really kind of work through those feelings, and I never was really the same, I don't think, after that, but I had to learn how to deal with that better.
Yeah, no, that's incredibly brave that you mentioned that. Can I tap you a little bit to go a little deeper? Can you, for those people that are maybe going through it, that just haven't come to, I guess, reconcile with it, can you give them an understanding of what you were going through, what those feelings were like?
But it is a very overwhelming feeling. I mean, I got to the point where I could not even watch the news anymore, because every time I watched the news, it would just bring it back for me. Even when I go through the city, every intersection that I've handled a fatal crash, I can see clear as day. I may not always remember names, but I know the intersection. I know the areas. Even for us with homicide, it's the same. So it can be very overwhelming. It can make you very, very sad. You just have to find good, healthy outlets to deal with that. And I think that's probably the one thing a lot of detectives struggle with sometimes, is finding ways to deal with things in a healthy manner and not in an unhealthy manner.
Risky behavior, right?
Right.
So just to recap, sense of being overwhelmed. Please don't let me put words in your mouth. Correct me if I'm wrong. You go back to the scene, memories of the scene, and the consequences.
Yeah, I mean, there's always cases that are just going to touch you the wrong way. And that's what I try to teach when I work with the cadets, just so that they understand sometimes there's that one thing that you don't know what it is. It's just going to touch you the wrong way. And you need to know and address that right away as soon as you feel it, and be able to talk about it. And it's okay. And I know it's cliche to say it's okay to not be okay, but it really is okay to not be okay. Yeah. We just need to deal with it.
I am Robert Asencio, and today on Bets and Badges, we're going to discuss women in law enforcement, the challenges that they experience in today's modern age law enforcement. So I have the privilege and honor of introducing and bringing to you a friend, a colleague, a person who spent almost 23 years in the city of Miami Police Department, rose to the ranks from officer all the way up to commander. Her name is Kimberly Caruso. How are you, Kim?
I'm good. How are you?
Hey, man. Great to have you on this conversation.
Yes.
So I was doing a little research before the show, and I discovered that nationally, males outnumber women in law enforcement by about 86%. We also know that when they rise to the ranks at the command level, supervisor level, let's go mid-level managers, I'd say from sergeant to the rank of maybe major, there's about 7% of women in those fields. But when it goes higher to the rank of assistant chief to chief, it drops to 3%. So let's talk about that. You're a woman in law enforcement.
Yes.
Tell me about your experiences.
There's a lot there. Those numbers are kind of disheartening. I'm not going to lie. I mean, it's different when we look in South Florida because there are a lot of women in law enforcement in South Florida.
I would think the major metropolitan cities, right?
Yes, I think there's more probably there. But when we look at the statistics nationwide, it dwindles. But even in my own agency at the command staff level, it is a very small number, which is more consistent with it being the same nationwide. So it is very disheartening as a woman. And it makes it hard for our recruitment and for our retention when we just don't have that there. You know, we need to have something for somebody to look towards to aspire to.
And I always found it difficult, you know, as a man, right? It was a challenge to balance my home life and work life, right? Career and home life. But for a woman, especially a parent, you know, whether you're a single parent or have a spouse, you know, the responsibilities for women are slightly different in households than they are for men. That's our culture. So how difficult did you find that as a woman with children in a household?
And it's not to put down, because there's a lot of single dads out there too that handle both, and my hat is off to them as well. But as a woman in this field, you tend to be put more on the shelf when you're in those types of positions at that point. I mean, I had even been told at one point, hey, you're a mom. There's no way, you know, I would never consider you for command staff because you're a mother. Mm-hmm. And why would you want that? You know, why would you want to do those things? And it's like, well, because I want that. That's why I became a police officer, and I want to continue in my leadership role. And, you know, I'm doing my best to find that balance where I can be a good parent, because that's the most important thing, but I also want to professionally grow. So, you know, as a woman, it's a very challenging thing. I definitely had those conversations even before I got promoted to commander, which was, hey, you understand you're going to lose, you know, you are going to lose at home, and you need to understand that. And I did my best to find a good balance with that. Yeah. But the most important thing is you have to be a parent no matter what.
I mean, I can remember birthdays, me not being there. I can remember events, me having to catch up, or, well, family events, right? As we go up the ranks, we get called out. Mm-hmm. So, let's talk about the experiences and you know, you went from patrol to investigations, I guess. And, yes. And let's talk about your career a little bit.
Yeah, so I spent about the first 6 years in patrol. I had been asked to go to other specialized units, but I just really didn't have an interest in those units. I really wanted to go to traffic homicide. That was the love of my life.
What attracted you to traffic homicide?
Before I became a police officer, when I was going through college, I went through FIU, and they have a internship program with Miami-Dade Police Department. So I did that, you know, 100 years ago, and it's a 12-week long program. So I remember the best times that I had were in homicide, as well as working with the auto theft people. And I love dealing with cars. So I found this passion for it kind of early on. I remember in the academy, I had zero interest in it, other than I liked the drawing aspect of doing the crash reports. But, you know, it was something about it. Once I really started doing it and trying to figure out what happened, that's what intrigued me, I guess, the most. And that's what's always intrigued me in police work, is understanding the why. So even in crash investigations, you want to understand, why did this happen? How could this have not happened? So that's really what got me into it.
My hat's off to those that were able to put the pieces together, right? Traffic was never my forte. I hated getting out and doing diagrams, right? But there's a need for that. Um, it's not just investigating the crimes; it's following up, right? Or the incidents following up. And I'm sure that took a toll on you. Can you explain a little bit about that?
Oh my gosh. And that's really what I loved about it too, was it's one thing as a patrol officer to respond to something, but you don't really get to see like the end result. So that's really what drew me into, was I wanted to kind of see what would happen, and follow the investigation through from beginning to end. But yeah, 100%. In my 4-year tenure as a detective, we handle in the city of Miami about 200 call outs annually. With
That's a
6
lot.
detectives. Yeah. So it's pretty rough. It's not easy. And we help each other all the time. I mean, we work as individuals, but we do work together, to work cases. And probably during my tenure, I think I have about 30 fatal crashes that I handled during my 4 years. And that's a lot of work. And the hardest part with it is, again, it's making those notifications. You're dealing with people that literally just got in their car to go wherever they were going to go and something happened. So they're completely innocent victims. So it's hard to have those conversations with people and have to tell them, to be that person in the middle of the night, to have that conversation. I literally just said something about this last night with a homicide guy that I was working with. And it was that when people say, oh, I know you from somewhere, you want to almost say, no, you don't want to know me from somewhere. Because if you dealt with me, it was probably not in a good way, but it does take a toll on us to do those notifications, to have to deal with death and destruction all the time. It takes it out on you. And I know it did for me. So
for sure. No, as you're speaking, I was thinking I pulled up on a scene of an accident, right? It was a vehicle versus a person. Not much of a challenge there. Well, not much of a competition there.
Yeah.
It was a little child. And I remember pulling up to the scene and she was in bad shape. And her eyes were rolling and I knew that she was about to expire. And I called for rescue, and as rescue's coming up, I cradled her. Maybe not the best thing, and she died in my hands.
Yeah.
Yeah, that messed with me for years.
Yeah.
And I wasn't able to talk about it.
Right.
And I didn't know who to speak to.
Yes.
And it was one of my colleagues on the squad, the female.
Yeah.
Who has since passed. She asked me what was going on, and I shared it with her, and she brought some comfort to just allowing me to speak. So thank you for that. And you mentioned about positive outlets. Right? Can we talk through what some of your positive outlets were?
Probably working.
Diving into the job?
Yeah, it was difficult. Yeah, I'm a workaholic. So I have to recognize in myself that when I want to deal with problems, I find work. Because that's my way to deal. And that's how I have dealt with a lot of things over the last couple of years, is just to stay busy. So if I stay mentally busy, I'm okay. And it helps me to kind of just pass that time, I guess. But I do feel very strongly. I mean, now being retired, I focus more with hobbies and stuff like that to help me to de-stress. But when I was working and when I did have downtime, for me, cooking was a big one, because anything where I can like kind of check out, I have to turn my brain off. That's what I have to do, because that's the only way I can reset myself is to find something that I can't think about anything but what's in front of me. And for me, like cooking, I have to have a recipe. I can't cook on the fly. I'm terrible at that. But if I have a recipe, I have to stick with that recipe at all times. I can't break my focus, because if I break my focus, then I'll mess up the recipe. So that had helped me back then, and obviously staying very busy with my kids. Kind of going back to like with kids, I remember with the Dallas shooting, what was that, like 2016, when several officers were killed there. I remember I had to go see my daughter right away. Like I didn't know what to say to my officers when I came to roll call. I was a lieutenant at the time. I was a patrol lieutenant. And I worked afternoons. So I stopped at the daycare on my way to work just to give her a hug, because I was like, man, this is hard. Like, every day I'm coming to work and I don't know what's going to happen. And I need to start really understanding that, because I think we don't realize, we don't think about those things so much because we're in it. It's probably not good for us not to think about those things. But when those types of incidents happen, it does bring a lot of stuff home to us.
Almost gives you a purpose for living, right? That you're living
Yeah.
for someone else, and not that you're not living for other people but the kids, they just bring some
Oh,
this
100%.
paternal feeling that it is true. It
Yeah.
is true. They bring out the paternal feelings,
Yes.
emotions.
Yeah.
Talking about you coming up through the ranks, how difficult did you find it? How challenging did you find it?
It was very challenging. It was not easy. I mean, we have testing. So, for sergeant, lieutenant, and captain, which we've kind of eliminated captain at this point. But sergeant, lieutenant is testing. So that's, they have to go by the testing process. After that, then it becomes selection for staff level positions. But it wasn't easy. I mean, it was very difficult. For sergeant, I didn't take my first sergeant's test till I was about 9 years into the job. So I took it then, and then lieutenant's test they had not given for.
Which is courageous.
Yeah,
to make that leap, that initial leap
Yeah.
from officer to sergeant.
That's the hardest leap you'll ever
Sure
make. I
is.
tell people all the time, even everybody I train that is going for sergeant, I always tell them this is the hardest one you're going to make. After this, it's a lot easier.
Yeah.
But I struggled with it. But going and I didn't have kids. I didn't have kids till I became a lieutenant. So now it changed kind of that perspective too, because, we have schedules, we have this. I was married at the time to another police officer. So we
That
have
must
to
have been
make,
challenging.
yeah. So you got challenging schedules now,
Yeah.
he works 12-hour shifts. I work 10-hour shifts, like, how do we make this work? We don't have help at home. We don't have family that can help us with our kids. So it's very challenging. And then studying for my lieutenant's exam was rough, having a baby in the house.
How long did you study for your lieutenant's exam?
Oh my gosh. Several months. It was a couple of months. Yeah. And same for sergeant. They were the same.
I like to think that I started when I started the job, right? When I was hired after finishing my FTO program, field training officer program. I started just learning and thinking eventually I want to get promoted.
Yeah, I mean, once the problem is the deeper you get into your career, especially when you get into a unit you really want to be into, then it's like, oh, do I really want to move on from here? But you have to. You have to keep moving forward, not only for, pension purposes and stuff like that, but as a person, you need to do that because you bring a lot to the table and you need to share that information with other people so they can learn from you. Like, as I've come to realize, and I think a lot of us don't realize until we're gone, once you're gone, that's it. There's no more of you there at the department. So you have to leave a legacy there. Hopefully, you've put in that time to train people to take your position. That's really what we should be working towards as supervisors, is having people, training them up so they can take our spot, and empowering them. Hey, listen, I need you to get out there. I need you to do things the way I was doing them. And I want you to be that person because I'm not there anymore. So. Yeah.
And sadly, we have a lot of supervisors that are fearful of that succession planning, right? No one can do it better than me. Because they feel if they do, then I'm expendable.
Right.
When in reality, we all are.
Yes.
Life goes on, the department goes on. So we talked about the challenges that you've experienced, right? Now you're a trainer.
Yes.
And now, since leaving police work or retiring from police work, you are now teaching and you're trainer at the Broward College Criminal Justice Institute, right?
Yes.
Talk about your role there a little bit.
Yeah, I teach there and at Miami-Dade as well, which is nice because that's kind of the homecoming for me every time I go to Miami-Dade, because that's where I went to the academy. So it's kind of a nice feeling every time that I go there. But really just it's being able to pass along that knowledge of all these years to give them different experiences. And obviously I always tell them, you're going to have different instructors. I want you to pick the brains of every instructor that comes in here because we all have different experiences. Every police department you work for it has different things, male, female. It's just, you get a wide range of experience. For
sure.
But I always bring that to them, to bring to them that level of, hey, please remember why you started this job. I feel very strongly that the person that I was when I started the job is the same person who retired, just with obviously more experience and different feelings underneath that. But I still have the same love and level that I had when I first started that I have 24 years later, So I try to teach that to them, how to survive their career, which I think none of us teach them that, which I think is kind of an important thing, of how to be successful. You know, again, the end goal is for them to retire.
Yeah.
So we have to get them there.
Do you find yourself training to help them overcome those
Yes, I think
and maybe
so.
avoid some of the errors
Yes.
you made along the way?
100%. Like I always try to teach them how to avoid pitfalls. I think that's probably, you know, the biggest thing. How to deal with adversity, how to deal with challenges, how to understand, to kind of maybe take those rose-colored glasses off that they have when they come on. You know, I always tell them they got the bait and switch, you know, when they got hired. So I try to, because I don't believe in the bait and switch.
Yeah.
So I try to, you know, bring home some of those things to make them understand, because I think sometimes they don't understand what they got themselves into.
How could you?
Yeah, I guess not, you know, but it's trying to help them, to prepare them, you know, because they're going to be faced with adversity. They're going to be faced with difficult decisions. They're going to be faced with difficult calls. And the more we can try to prepare them for those moments, then that's what it's there for. You know, understanding, you know, not everybody in the station is your friend.
Yeah.
You know, you need to have a very good home life. You need to have a life outside of the job. You can't make this job that you put that uniform on. It is a piece of clothing. It is not everything that is you. You know, so you need to remember that you're still you under that uniform.
For those out there struggling, especially women, right? You're a role model.
Mm-hmm.
What can you tell them? What advice can you provide them that will help them overcome the consequences of the pitfalls, if you will, of trauma, PTSD, the emotional situations, anxiety that we all experience from the job, conflicts?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing is don't be afraid to get help. There's absolutely no reason that you should ever feel, you know, afraid. I think thankfully mental health and law enforcement has evolved a lot over the last, especially over the last couple of years. You know, obviously when I started 100 years ago, it was, you know, hey, that was nice, you know, here's a pat on the back, get back to work. You know what I mean? Like that, nobody cared what you just saw or what you just dealt with. You dare not cry. You know what I mean? Like you weren't allowed
Suck
to
it
feel
up.
anything. Right. Suck it up, buttercup, and get back to work. But that doesn't work, right? So there's so much out there now for us. There's a better understanding of that. So just not being afraid and understanding it's okay to talk. And if the person you're talking to is not the right person, then it's okay, find somebody else. But keep talking. Don't stop talking. You're going to feel there's going to be days that you felt like you got ran over by a Mack truck. I have been there. I have been there more times than I care to be. Okay. But you still got to get back up. And then when you have children at home, it's one thing when you don't have kids. It's another thing when you have kids. Guess what? You got to get back up. Because as a mother, there is nobody there to hear you cry, just you. So you can't let them see that either. And they have to see when you fall, they have to see you get back up. They have to see you persevere. Because if we're not showing them that, we're role models to our children above all. If we're not showing them that, then they're going to fall down that path too. Yeah. So that's my biggest thing is, man, listen, you can insert whatever you want situation happens, but you got to get back up and you have to keep fighting. It's going to hurt. Like it hurts like hell. I'm not going to tell you that it doesn't, you know. I suffer, you know, with grief terribly, but I still get back up and I get back to work and I get to it. You know, I can't sit around and cry all day. I don't have time for that. I got to get back up. It's time to go. So that's really my best advice, and just getting the help and finding healthy habits.
But what about the fear? You know, that if we divulge
right
what we're going through, we may be taken off the line or may jeopardize our career
and that's
livelihood.
That's understandable, and it shouldn't be that way. And I get exactly where that is, where it's like, and I felt that way. Like if you feel that you say something, then people look at you as you're weak. So you're weak. You're not a good leader. You're not a good supervisor. In fact, on the contrary, you're actually the best leader out there because you're the most human of all of us. So you're the one that's there showing them. When I teach assessment center and I teach people how to be supervisors, the first thing I tell them is, you get that gold badge, don't put the gold badge wall up, okay? No one's perfect that wears this gold badge. So don't suddenly start being that person, or you can't empathize with your people, or you can't feel bad, or you can't feel those things. Absolutely not. Absolutely not. All of us have to deal with hardships. We're all human. So step up and be a human being for your people and take care of them. That's how being a leader 101 is taking care of your people. And I think a lot of people forget about that.
What do you want to share with anyone that would listen to this or view this video that can benefit from your experience? What would you like to share with them?
I mean, it's funny. I still have a lot of people that come to me that they want to become police officers. So, and women especially. And, you know, they feel maybe a little disheartened or a little bit turned off sometimes by things, or they find things a little bit challenging. But I always tell people, listen, if this is what you really want, you're going to do what you need to do. Sometimes timing is a lot of things too. Sometimes things aren't meant for us at that time. We may have to go through some other things before we get to there. Same thing, you want to become a supervisor, and maybe the first time it doesn't work out. So now you're on your second round of trying to get in there. But everything is timing in life, so just be patient. Don't give up on something, stay committed to those things. That's definitely something I can say for myself, that once I'm committed to something, I'm extremely loyal to that. And that's that. Like for me, it's very difficult for me to stop doing something. It's hard. And there's days it's not easy. There's days that it's so much easier to quit, right? And just say, okay, I've had enough. So the example I use a lot now since retiring and taking up a hobby, because I didn't have.
What kind of hobby?
So it's learning how to play guitar. Probably one of the hardest things I have ever done in my life, I've come to realize.
So you mastered the chords?
I'm getting better. I haven't mastered them, but I am getting better. But I went from being deathly afraid to even touch the thing, and then slowly learning how to like hold it and tune it, to now I'm able to kind of play through songs, which I never could do that before. And I never thought I could ever do that. Right. But it taught me a lot about myself. It's taught me a lot about perseverance, because like there's days that I'm like, oh my God, why am I doing this? It's taught me that I'm not a quitter, which I knew that. I've always known that I don't quit. I don't quit on people, and I don't quit on things. So I'm that person. And it's really taught me that I've always been a perfectionist, and I can't be a perfectionist with this. I have to just smile, laugh. You did horrible right now. That's okay. Let's start over again. Take a breath. Ooh, let's take a little break, come back to it. You know what? Today's enough. Let's come back to it tomorrow. So I've had to learn that about myself, I guess, over the last year and a half. So it's been a good thing, but that's kind of one of those things that I try to push on people, is find things that are outside your comfort zone. That's a big one. And just, what? I know it's uncomfortable in the beginning, but just stick to it. And keep working at it. Don't give up at it. I have actually in my bedroom, it's funny, a sign I had made, and it reminds me every day, you didn't come this far to come this far, right? So I didn't come this far to turn back around and walk back. It is what it is. I'll keep going. Times are tough, but I'll keep pushing, and that's it.
So what I'm hearing is, in spite of the challenge, perseverance is the name of the game.
Yes.
And we must challenge ourselves to push beyond our comfort. Bravo. So I've been speaking with Kimberly Caruso, retired City of Miami homicide detective, but also a City of Miami commander, spent 23 years in law enforcement. Now she's at the Broward School of Justice, training our future police officers. I can't thank you enough. To the Millers, Grant Michael Miller, the community news team, and our producer behind the scenes, Rachel Brummage. Thank you to you, the audience. You can find us on all podcast platforms, at least the major podcast platforms: Spotify, Apple, iHeart, Amazon, YouTube, or our website, www.betsandbadges.com, or here at Miami's Community News. See you next time.